Well, Amber, we are now live
All right.
on multiple platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. So I would love to just kind of start this off as an interview, but as we kind of shared out on social media, I think I had a bunch of comments back that were like, you two all are just friends. So um,
Yeah.
so Amber Farley, maybe you can share a little bit about who you are, what you do with FMS Social, and just share a little bit about yourself.
I know. I'm happy to do that. Happy to be on live, especially with you. I was like, this is one of the more fun things I've gotten to do during this pandemic is just have an excuse to chat with you for an hour and catch up. And hopefully we'll see some friends join here and just be a part of this. But for those of you that don't know me, I'm Amber Farley. I'm an executive vice president here at Financial Marketing Solutions, and I head up our digital department. So anything that encompasses digital media, social media. I speak and teach a lot around the country on that, which is how I know you've been. So just happy to be a part of this. Happy to talk about some of the things that we're dealing with here at the agency and some of our clients are dealing with, and then anything else you just want to catch up on.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I thought it would just kind of be fun for us to catch up and then we could sort of share it with a whole bunch of friends out
Yeah.
in bank marketing world. And obviously it's just a tough time for a lot of people. And so, we've always kind of connected at conferences in different places, but why don't you tell us a little bit about what life has looked like for you in the last, say, 4 weeks or so? What's different? Kids are at home?
5 weeks. This has been our fifth week. I don't know about you, but yes, 5 weeks for us. We talked about that this past Monday. What is today? Thursday? It gets confusing. This past Monday, we talked about how this is our fifth week working from home since all of this, and so yeah, it's been different. It's been challenging. Some things have been really good about it. Some things have been sort of par for the course, like business as usual. Some things have been incredibly challenging. Um, so this is the fifth week working from home every day, all day. Actually, today I am at the office. I was so excited when you invited me to be part of this interview. I said to my husband, I said, so this is live, and we have two small children, and we don't know what will happen. Two dogs, two small children. We live on 13 acres with a lot of loud birds and cows next door and lots of sounds. So I used that as an excuse to come to the agency office, which was about 25 minutes from my house. And I'll tell you, it was nice. It was nice just to get out for a minute. On my way here, I stopped at Starbucks. I still have it. I'm like nursing it. We don't have Starbucks in Fairview, so I was happy just to go there and have them deliver it to my car and wipe it off with a little Lysol wipe. And stopped at Target on the way in. I ordered my first grader, Mason. He is not going back to school, and so he's sort of sad about not finishing first grade. And so we got him a Star Wars Lego kit, kind of as a congrats on completing first grade thing. And so I stopped by Target and I had them put it in my car. And I'm saying all of this because today I showered, I got in the car, I went for a drive, I put makeup on, I stopped at Starbucks, I stopped at Target, I came to the office. It's like today's the most normal day in 5 weeks. It felt good. Every other day, Ben, has been survival. um, most of you know, I have a 7-year-old, Mason. I have a 3-year-old, Caroline, and they are super cute, super loud, super need attention all the time. So you can imagine that the house has been, and they've been at home all 5 weeks as well, as has my husband. So we are now all trying to manage two careers, homeschooling, some daycare curriculum, playtime, all of those things under one roof. So that has been a blessing. That's what we say at the house. This is a blessing. It has obviously also been exhausting to try and manage it all, but it's working. It's working. 5 weeks in, and we're just now hitting a good groove, I think.
Yeah. Well, and your kids are in school. You've got one in school or would be in school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, not in school.
Uh, correct. Correct. So that got announced here in Tennessee yesterday. our governor. Up until yesterday, the kids were going back to school on April 24th, I think is what they said, which is that, I think that's next week. And so yesterday we knew they were making a big announcement on what they were going to do. And the governor recommended that all schools close for the remainder of the year. And, you know, the governor recommends it. And then we were all just waiting for the call. In Williamson County here, her name is Carol Birdsong. And so anytime you see a email or a phone call from Carol Birdsong, it's usually never good news for parents that are working. And so, you know, you saw the call come through and you're like, oh. And sure enough, schools closed for the rest of the year, which, you know, I think that's a good thing. We're kind of now getting in the groove. I almost think it would be harder to throw him back in school for a month and then out for summer break. So it's a good thing. It's just at least 5 more weeks of dealing with that, if not longer, because then you have summer too, you know?
Yeah. So now you on a normal week, are you at home? What portion are you working remotely and what portion are you normally at the office?
Before all this happened.
Yeah.
So before all this happened, my normal schedule was 3 days in the office, 2 days at home. And that's if I'm not traveling. So I traveled a lot, attending a lot of different banking schools around the country, a lot of different conferences around the country. We've got clients all over the country. So visiting clients and doing brand discovery and giving client presentations. So lots and lots of travel. So on weeks that I traveled, that schedule wasn't necessarily intact. It was just, you know, if you're traveling, that sort of counts as an office day. And if not, then, you know, come to the office as much as you can. So my company has been wonderful through that part of it. You know, just they definitely support being a parent and working. They've always supported that. And I think that was why we here at the agency, we were able to adapt so quickly to that. You know, none of us have worked from home 100% of the time. I would say some of us have worked from home if need be. Most of our jobs here at the agency, you can do that. You know, like it's you're able to work from home if you need to, as long as you have the right equipment and technology. Most of us are able to do our job at home or traveling or at an airport or whatever we need to do. But it's different when all of us are doing it, and it's sort of the only option at that time. And how do we keep production going smoothly, and how do we stay in contact with our clients? And a big thing for us here at FMS is, you know, how do we stay close to one another? We truly are a second family. You know, most of us are around each other all of the time, even more so than real family members. And that was a big focus of our management team, is how do we stay close to one another? How do we take care of one another and make sure that each member of our team and their families have what they need during this time? So we were lucky that we were able to adjust and adapt pretty quickly when all of this started showing that we needed to, but it's gotten a little bit better and better each week, I would say.
Good. Now, your role at FMS, you've been sort of known as Amber Farley, the social media expert in banking and content, and now a lot, when I see you at conferences, a lot of what you're talking about is brand and that awareness as well. Sort of how's that transition worked throughout the years?
Sure. So my background, even before FMS, I sort of accidentally fell into financial marketing. You know, I never worked at a bank before. I didn't grow up in a family of bankers. It was nothing like that in my own personal background. To take a few steps back, last night I actually was going through my journal and scrapbook when I was the senior. I know a lot of you saw my senior picture because several of you commented on that I looked like 8 years old. But you know, in going back through some of that, there were some goals and aspirations, and one of them was to be in broadcasting. And I just started cracking up because I forgot about that. But I remember wanting to do that, you know, like wanting to be a journalist and to find the good news of the world and report that out there. And, you know, to connect with America that way, and to be a voice that way, and to hopefully teach. I even considered teaching and doing some childhood education, you know, before getting into advertising. And it was just weird to look back through all of that and remember some of those passion points. And I'm only sharing that because what killed all of that is in college, I had one journalism class, and it was the kind that they made you go into the studio and sit down in a chair, and it's you and the camera. The whole rest of the room is black, and you're just supposed to talk to the camera. And I was just sweating. I mean, it was the most miserable experience of my entire life. And those that know me pretty well now know I hate being on video. So this shows how much I love you, Ben.
Wow.
Yes, I
Doing
cannot stand
well.
it. Yeah, I cannot stand it. And so this whole transition of having to talk to people via video has made me get out of my comfort zone because we're talking to clients and each other and, industry professionals. But anyway, long story short, I ended up switching my major to advertising. I didn't even really know what it was. I just knew, hey, that kind of sounded cool. I think How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days had come out around then, and Matthew McConaughey was like a
Sure.
cool copywriter. And I was like, oh, that seems like a fun job. I also quickly learned I was not a creative writer, so that part of advertising got killed. So I studied media. I really loved psychology. I loved the study of people and how people behave, and what makes them sort of tick, what makes them do certain things. I thought the media part of advertising was fascinating because it's sort of, psychology and understanding human behavior and understanding why we watch certain things and do certain things, and fell in love with that side of it. Out of college, I started working at a local agency here in Nashville called the Bunton Group. It was a great foundation to learn. I did a lot of media planning and buying. Left there and worked in South Florida, Boca Raton, Florida, at a company called More Visibility. Still a great company today. They do a lot of digital and social and search. Big partners of Google, doing a lot of SEO and SEM, and learned a lot there. And then decided to come back home. My husband and I at the time, he was in the Coast Guard in West Palm Beach, and both of us are from Nashville. So we decided to come back home, and had one interview with Tim. A friend of a friend of a family member worked here. And so I had one interview with Tim and a few other interviews lined up from the agencies that I worked at in the past. And this just clicked. And so I know you asked me how I transitioned from social to branding, but that's why my passion was always in, before FMS, it was all in the digital and media side of things and understanding that. And social kind of entered the world at that time. And when I started FMS in 2009, there wasn't a lot of banks doing social. There were a lot of other industries doing social, and we had worked with a lot of those at More Visibility. And I just fell in love with that side of it. I've always been a very social person. I'm an extrovert, definitely loved human connection. And I thought it was fascinating that there was a place in the social world for businesses, and really wanted to understand that. And then when I started at FMS, I really, really wanted to understand how to make that work for banks. And so one of the first things I did at FMS was go to the ABA School of Bank Marketing. At the time, it was in Dallas. And it was a huge learning experience about how banks work and getting to talk to bankers and bank marketers across the country. And I quickly learned that there wasn't a lot of banks doing social media. There wasn't a lot of banks that had an interactive website yet. There was just a real need there. And so I was able to partner with the ABA after that, and be able to have a voice on behalf of FMS that helped banks be better at developing social media strategies and social media policies and all of those things. So I think that's how I got deemed the social expert, which I hate that phrase because social changes daily. I don't know how anybody could be an expert in it, but just a thought leader or subject matter voice in the space for banks. But on the flip side, FMS, we got started in 2004. We've always been a branding agency. Our CEO, Tim Pinnell, had worked at other agencies that worked with banks, and it seemed as if bank marketing was, very templated. A lot of it being a commoditized industry, we're just sort of doing the same thing. And he felt very passionate about brands and how a lot of the national brands out there were able to have this voice and this personality that made people feel connected to them. And to feel like they were almost a member of that company's family and to have this emotional connection with them. And he truly felt that there was a need for that in banking, especially community banks who are very, very, very passionate about the communities that they serve. And so that's kind of how FMS was born. He had a lot of experience in marketing, and that's definitely something we brought to the table for banks initially. But it's always been branding at its core. And so as we get the opportunity to speak and teach, branding is something that we are still very passionate about today, just because, especially in the community banking space, that's really what's going to set you apart from your competitors. And so anytime I get the chance to speak on that, I think everybody that works here is incredibly passionate about that topic. It's the most fun topic to talk about. I think that's, one of the reasons we do that. But I still get asked to teach and speak a lot on the social and digital side of it, because that is how you are communicating your brand through relevant channels today. We have to do that to be relevant as a marketer. And so making sure that our clients in the industry is as up to date as possible about what's available out there from digital channels and social channels is still very important to me personally.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks for giving us the lay of the land, and thanks. I had no idea that you hated being on camera. So now, thank you so much for joining
You're welcome.
us. Thanks for taking that sacrifice. But you've done great, and no one would ever guess that you didn't like being on camera. So
It's
when
so
we think
different
about,
from, it's so different. I would stand in front of an audience of 1,000 people before being on camera in front of 3. It's just, there's something different. I don't know.
yeah. Oh, it is a different experience, and then you get some
It is.
lights behind you or whatever, and it's it is different. So you mentioned, I need to give you this nod out. You shared some of your high school photos yesterday or day before. You've got some family, right, that is doesn't essentially get to graduate. So we're kind of in this moment where I think all of us are hitting these weird moments. My wife and I were going to take a trip a few weeks ago. It didn't happen. We have a bunch of those things where they just didn't happen. But for some people, like you've got some family not graduating, that's really kind of a setback of it's sort of part of your identity when you're graduating.
It's funny that you said that, because I know a lot of people don't have a good high school experience. And I know a lot of people don't feel passionate about their senior year. And you're correct. I've got a niece, Kennedy, and a nephew, Bo, who they're not brother and sister, but both of my sisters had a kid like at the same time. So they grew up together, and we've been watching them, succeed in sports and academics for years as a family. We're a very tight family. And yeah, it's devastating. It's devastating for me. I can't even imagine how they feel. It's devastating for me not to be able to watch my nephew play his last year of baseball, not to watch my niece get to experience, prom and saying goodbye to her friends and graduation, although I hope they do something. So yeah, it's, I know everybody's having to make sacrifices, but for some reason that one has seemed incredibly difficult to swallow, because for me, my senior year was so critical. I remember even back then knowing how big of a deal it was. My husband disagrees. He said, "You cared about graduating? Like you actually cared about walking across the stage?" And my mouth hit the floor, and I'm like, "You didn't? Like who doesn't care about that?" And I'm an overachiever and a planner, and so I probably envisioned it for 15 years before it happened. So yeah, of course, it was a huge day. I remember being nervous and excited, and just didn't know what the future held, and that made me nervous and excited. And I don't know, it was a beautiful day and a beautiful experience, and my heart aches for the seniors this year that aren't going to be able to experience that in the natural way that it's supposed to be experienced. Although I've heard that some of the counties, at least here in Tennessee, are going to do something for them. I don't know if that'll be a virtual something or push it back till later in the summer, but yeah, it's that's something that just seems just really painful, and they probably don't even know yet. I hope they don't know yet how painful that might be, but I would just be heartbroken if I didn't get to experience that myself.
Yeah, it's such a different it's a different time for a lot of those students kind of figuring out that thing out. Now, in banking, we're sort of I was chatting with a few bankers today and I was like, it feels like we're at halftime in some respects on kind of where we're at with this sprint and PPP loans and getting that stuff out the
Yeah.
door. Because, with that sort of limit getting shut off, at least it sort of gives a lot of bankers a breather right now. So I'm guessing we have some people viewing that are kind of in that mode where they're saying, "Hey, at least I don't have to be processing some of these PPP loans. Maybe it's a more normal schedule today, I hope." But I'd love to hear from you a little bit about how brand meets crisis. We've had a lot of conversations at
Mm.
our office about that, um, and helping remind people about what happens with brand. But I'd love to hear your perspective of what happens when and what are the conversations you're having around brand uh, during a crisis.
Yeah, I think that's a great question because it's several different conversations. When this first happens, it was crisis mode, as you mentioned. I think that's the perfect word. Like, okay, this is happening. How do we help our clients communicate to their customers and their communities about what is happening? What do they need to know? What do we need to know to make them feel better? Like what can we provide to them, to our clients to provide to their communities? That was the initial conversations that were happening. From a branding perspective and how brand sort of merges with crisis, my hope is that um, there's a real understanding of what we mean by brand to begin with. A brand is really nothing more than what the marketplace and what people feel about you, period. Every bank out there, every company out there has a brand. Whether because of what they're doing or in spite of what they're doing, people feel a certain way about your company. I mean, they just do. And the act of branding is what we are all busy doing as marketers, is helping to influence how people feel about our organization. And so, in something like a crisis, although I don't think any of us could have prepared for this, but in any type of crisis, I think it's important to anticipate the feelings that people might have during the crisis. There's some real technical deliverables that I think need to happen, and a communication strategy that needs to happen. And of course, I think most of us were prepared for some of that, right? I mean, we know the checklist of items of how to reach our clients, customers, and how do we get in front of them, and what do we need to get in front of them with. But I think the brands that do it the best are the brands that know who they are at their core. They know what their purpose is. They know why they're in business. If they were to write one thing they're passionate about on the wall in the boardroom, they should be able to do that if they truly have a solid understanding of their brand as an organization. And if that's the case, and everything is focused on that, and that passion point, and that purpose, if you will, is the foundation of everything else that we do, from a communication strategy to a product development strategy to a marketing strategy to an expansion brick and mortar strategy. If everything is based back to that foundation of who we are and at our core and what our real brand is as an organization, then crisis communication just is a natural extension of that, right? We need to make sure that we are not trying to be our competitors down the road. We need to make sure our voice is authentic. We need to make sure that we're using empathy. We need to have our listening ears on. What I tell my toddler, are your listening ears on? We've got to have our listening ears on to make sure that we truly have an understanding of the needs of our customers, and even anticipate what some of the new needs are going to be beyond this. And be rooted in our core, be rooted in our purpose, but also have the appetite as an organization to evolve. Because I think you would agree with me on this. I don't think any of us are going to go back 100% to how things were. I don't even know if
Yeah.
that's possible as a species. I don't think everything will go back perfectly. Some things will, some things won't. And I think the brands that stay rooted in who they have always been and who they are and who they are going to be, and hopefully that doesn't change too much because you just are who you are. But if you're willing to grow and adapt and evolve based on what the needs are of your customers and you're listening, I think those are the brands that are going to come out stronger in the end from this.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I love the way how you're talking about anchoring in that purpose and meaning. We talk about it at our office that like a brand should be able to pivot, right? Like so, but it's still got an anchor point, right? It's still got
Mm-hmm.
this moment where you're saying, hey, you know what? At its core, this is really what we're about. And so I've been having a lot of conversations with community banks. They're saying, hey, we like we're trying to figure out. In that first week, we had a lot of these moments where we were saying, hey, like at what point, what do we need to change? And I would say, well, I think the first thing we want to do is go back to like what you're about, what that brand's about. And then maybe the stuff out here, maybe there's some stuff that you want to shift some messaging. We obviously have to be more sensitive, but like you're saying, that anchor, that sort of rootedness gets to be more and more important.
Ben, I know you're interviewing me, but can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Like with social assurance and just with some of your own clients, like what are some of the anxiety points from some of the banks that you're talking with from a social perspective? Like, is it, are you seeing banks, some of your clients be quieter than normal, being louder than normal, listening more, talking more? Like what are you seeing with some of the banks that you're working with?
When everything, I'll say, hit the fan, right? And we said, oh, everything's going to change. The first thing we did is we have some clients that we do make content for, and all of those I just said we got to like stop, like let's just evaluate the content that's going out, like press the pause button and figure it out. We had some that said, hey, we're just going to push out content as normal. And then we had others that said, actually, like, how do we're having a lot of trouble talking about what we're doing because it sounds opportunistic. So we have this question a lot of the times that goes between how do you be opportunistic, how do you not be perceived as opportunistic, but you also look at the opportunities to connect. Your community needs you to be communicating about these programs, but a lot of the things that you say that are even perceived as helpful, that first week you're seeing this $700 billion opportunity for banking, where we're saying, hey, there's $700 billion injected into lower cost loans. But as soon as we see somebody post, oh, there's an opportunity for lower cost loans, all of a sudden you see people jump on it and go, you're just trying to get your refis up. And you're going, well, actually, we're trying to communicate to you that if you really need it, refinancing might be a good time to refinance. That becomes a really delicate spot. So I think we're seeing some are pausing, some are saying, it's just really difficult to communicate about what really does help at this time. And I think that's the delicate spot we're running into.
Yeah, I could see that for sure because it's you want to communicate. Banks are a business. Community banks, still at their core are about helping the communities that they serve, and I've always been very proud to be able to be part of that industry. I've always wanted my career to be something where you lay your head down at night, you feel good about what you did, and working with community banks and helping them better the communities that they serve has given me selfishly that fulfillment there. But it is such a thin line that you don't want to cross right now, because empathy goes a long way, listening goes a long way, and truly trying to understand that not everybody is going the same thing. We are and we aren't, like we are all in this together. Nobody has ever experienced something like this. Nobody, no business, no rich person, poor person, nobody's experienced this before, but we all have different levels of what we're going through. And I think that's a really challenging thing right now for banks because I truly feel passionate that they are one of the unsung heroes right now. And maybe a lot of people don't even know it, like it's just ignorance in understanding that banks truly are the your go-to for some of this financial relief. And, I think banks are being put in a good spotlight this time around, and rightfully so, from some that truly do get it. But I do think at the same time that there's nothing more sensitive, there's nothing more personal than somebody's own financial stability, their family's financial well-being. And some people are being laid off, some people are being furloughed, and going through a lot of different hardships right now. And it's just challenging because banks are having to navigate through a lot of different personal and business needs right now.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. We had a question in from Courtney where she's asking about, hey, there's so many different conversations, like scary out there. She says, there's many news feeds are full of the somber news and flooded with COVID updates. What ideas do you have about other communication that people could be sharing?
Well, follow John Krasinski for your own personal. Do you follow him? He's come out with Good News. Oh my gosh. The Good News Network or whatever it is. It's like the thing I look forward to the most. I mean, I'm an Office fan, so loved him there and loved him in everything since then. But joking aside, yeah, honestly, Courtney, I'm just going to be real human right now. That has been a struggle for me personally. I'm an optimistic person. I am faith-based, and I don't necessarily just mean spiritual, that too, but also just faith in humanity. I try and always see the good. It's not even hard for me to try and see the good. I can see a stranger and immediately see the good. And my husband is like, you are going to just get like murdered one day because of that. But, I don't know. I see the good in humanity, and I just choose to see that. And I honestly got like I might even use the word depressed in a funk. I don't know what word to use, but for a few days when all this was going on, it was just, you wake up and it's the same day, and you turn on the news and it's just like the world's worst news ever. And you scroll through social media and it's a lot of the same thing. And you talk to your friends and they're experiencing the same thing. And so I too have been looking for that outlet, right? From a banking perspective, what can banks put out there right now that isn't gloom and doom? I don't think anything banks are doing is a part of that. Right now, up until today, I know the funds have run out, but in the past few weeks, banks have been working 24/7, truly. I know bankers who have been working all night, all day, some of these lenders processing these loans to truly help their small businesses and employees. And those that are communicating that and those that are aware of that are seeing the good in that. Now that part of it is over, right? The funds are out. What happens next? Hopefully more comes, but now what? I think we have to remember, just again, to take a step back and say, what do people need to hear right now? What can we as a bank provide to people that will make them feel a sigh of relief? Like, is there anything we can provide to them right now? Maybe how to do grocery shopping smarter, with your Instacart or whatever else you're using, or some tips that, banks can just provide for some financial planning, some tips to do with some of the stimulus checks that they might be getting, some positive tips and real valuable advice for what to do with some of these uncertain times, what to do if your spouse gets furloughed, what to do if, you get laid off. I mean, I know that might still be gloom and doom, but I think a lot of people want a leader right now. They need that. They need somebody to steer them in the direction that they need to go. And I think community banks have a real opportunity to be that voice from the financial aspect for a lot of people right now.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think you're right. There's a lot of opportunities to provide hope right now, and we're seeing that a lot of banks are providing a more hopeful message. And I think a lot of them are seeing that that there's a way to start sharing some of the other heroes. That's one of the things we've talked about a lot. That there's a lot of these heroes. My friend Nick, who runs a food truck here in town, and all of a sudden, he just flips his business model and says, "I'm going to do deliveries," and he sells out like the first day. Like, sells out for the entire week. He just says, "I'm going to schedule deliveries. I'm going to do it over Twitter," and he just like flips his menu. And I'm like, when you see entrepreneurs like that are doing that and really adapting that quickly, yes, he had support from his bank and he even tweeted about it. But his bank then can turn around and say, "Hey, Nick's really the hero here. Like, we're here, just
Mm.
being a support to him, but he's out there, figuring out how to get food, figuring out how to, navigate different menus and get it done. And our economy needs a whole bunch of Nicks out there doing it."
That is such a good point too, because I think there have been so many companies out there, especially in food, but other things too, that have completely had to, I'll use your word, pivot their brand, be rooted in who they are and be rooted in what their product offering is. But how do we find new ways to get that there? And I think that's a brilliant point is, Nick, who helped Nick do that? And how can we highlight some of those stories? And if, the bank was able to help him in some way, then wouldn't it be awesome for the bank to help Nick create a story that's his narrative about how he was able to do that, and not necessarily talk about the bank itself, but the bank could help Nick tell the story about how Nick was able to do that. And those are the type of stories I think people are needing to hear and to feel inspired by, to say like, okay, what we did and what we knew probably is never going to go back exactly how it was. So let's all just dust ourselves off, quit feeling sorry for ourselves for a minute, and say, okay, now it's time to say, what is the new normal going to be? What is this going to look like? And how can I don't want to say reinvent, but how can I better myself through this process? I think more stories like that is going to be this next wave of communication.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We talk about it a lot and say, hey, as a bank, whenever we put ourselves as the hero in this story, all of a sudden, then it looks opportunistic. It looks like,
Yeah.
hey, they need us to rescue them. They need us. But when we instead turn it and make that first-time home buyer, or we make, that other person the hero of that story, all of a sudden we get this great story that surfaces out of it, and it really shifts that narrative.
Or,
So Donna's got
like,
some. Yeah.
oh, I was just going to say one more thing back to Courtney, or just an idea. Um, what if too, like I'm a mom to a 7 and a 3-year-old, and I can tell you that even though I thought about being a teacher at one time, I now know that, thank God I never was, because no, at least not to small children. I love my children, but no. Teachers should get paid more. If anybody sees this that can make that decision, teachers should get paid more. But on that note, I have never searched for more resources to help first grade Common Core math, which whoever came up with that, shame on you. But just in general, what if banks came out with resources right now that could help people like me who are not typically in a teacher role, help their children learn some of the, financial need to knows throughout their different grade levels. Like a lot of these seniors are about to enter the real world probably a lot faster than they meant to, or even wanted to. And what are some tips and advice that bankers could provide the parents that are trying to equip these seniors before going out there to college, hopefully in the fall, or to, their first career, or, some tips and resources to help my first grader understand the importance of saving over spending, or whatever. But just thinking about what real people are having to deal with right now in their day-to-day worlds that maybe they didn't have to deal with, and having content be available for those moments.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I totally agree. Teachers should make $1 million. Absolutely. Um,
Mm.
Phenomenal stuff. So Donna, I know you know Donna. She's asking a little bit about what do we talk about with stimulus checks? There's the scam side of it, which
Mm.
she's asking about. Like, what do we talk about there? I think there's a whole range of questions about, like, how do you get them? What happens? What do you what should you be messaging if people haven't gotten their stimulus checks? So, do you have any ideas or insights on that?
Yeah. Yes. So I think one of the best things to do right now through any of this is, I've seen a lot of banks have blog posts about certain, COVID-19 things, tips and resources and stuff like that. I was just talking to a client the other day, and we were evaluating whether to push out like different blog articles about it or to have like one central location of where all your information can be. And I'm a fan of option B because things are changing so much, and so much new information is coming out related to the personal side of this and the business side of this, and just who knows what tomorrow will bring. I think having one dedicated place that if I'm talking to a bank, having one dedicated place on your website where your customers can go and they know they can receive the most up-to-date information, having a date at the top of the article that says this was last updated at 4 p.m. on, April 13th or whatever, and having all of that information there. Tips about the stimulus checks. I know there have been a lot of banks that had tips about the PPP program at the time during that. From a stimulus check standpoint, I think all of the things you just said, like how do I find out if I've qualified? How do I go? How and where do I go to check if I haven't received my check? If I am qualified, the calculator, I know that there's a calculator on the IRS's website that'll let you like calculate how much you can expect to get based on how many kids you have and all of that, linking to that. And then once you get the check, what you can do, because, if you're wanting to stimulate the economy, with this money, here are some ways that you can do that. Or if you're choosing to save that money, here are some smart, non-risky ways that you can do that with this particular money. But just, being a resource for those type of things so that people can kind of read it as a narrative and say, okay, here's where I go to find out if I qualify. Here's where I go to get it. Here's how I know how much I can expect to receive. And then what do I need to be prepared for? So I think all of those things, but having one central place for it so that if I see it, I'll give Natalie a shout out real quick from Grand Savings Bank. They did a really good carousel on Instagram yesterday, maybe. I don't
Yes.
But it was like eight to 10 different, like you can swipe and you can just read like different tips to do with the stimulus check, which is great. But if I saw that yesterday and I wanted to go back and reference it today, I know I can go to the bank's Instagram, feed Instagram grid to find that post from yesterday. But a lot of people don't. They're just scrolling through their social and might not know necessarily how to go back and find it. But if I can train my customers to know to always go to this one resource page, and that can be where the home for any tips and advice that I give, I think that can be a really good way of making people feel comfortable in knowing they have one place they can go to find any information about that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Plus, from a search engine perspective, that's going to help you as well in the short term. Everybody who's looking for stimulus checks in your community, that can start to build a lot of that traffic for you, and then redirect that. Just be that resource and collect it all. I think that's great advice. On the scam side,
and on that. Yeah. Oh no, I'll go ahead and finish. Just remind me because I want to talk about the media side of that.
Oh yeah, she also is chatting a little bit about that scam side of it and what to do. There's going to be we're just hitting the tip of the iceberg of scams right now because we're going to have PPP scams. You're going to have all of the ones dealing with stimulus checks and people trying to pre-fund that or here's what to do with it or here's how to inquire about your stimulus check. There's going to be a whole bunch of those that I think by giving people where to go, like you said, here's how to actually check on your stimulus check. Don't click on any other links. Click on this link if you want to know where it's at. Yeah.
And I think the banks that do, and Natalie may have even done this, I don't know if she did or not, but I think the banks that say, here's what we will do and here's what we won't do, and laying that out very specific always helps people. Because if you just sort of say, here's what you can expect, there's a lot of gray in that. But if you say, we will never call you and do X, Y, and Z, but we will do this, this, or this, it gives people very specific takeaways of what they can expect from their bank. And what that does is then allow, a red flag to go up if they do receive a call from somebody that says they're the bank or something like that. It lets them know, no, my bank told me they would never do that. And, kind of lets people feel more comfortable that way.
Nice. Patrick Earhart wants a sweatshirt. I got you, Patrick. Just DM me.
Me too. I don't have one either, Patrick.
I'll ship one to you, Amber. I got some. I got to go to
I
the
got the
office
FMS
tomorrow
shirt on,
anyway,
but
so there you go. That looks good. I'll send you one your way. I think one of the other things that really kind of in this time, and how do you feel like I made this reference to somebody earlier where I said, we're not made to be hamsters. Like if we don't feel like we're going anywhere, it really challenges our mental energy when we feel like we're just not progressing or we're not moving forward. How have you felt that, and how have you and your team felt like
I
you're
lost some airtime.
overcoming that challenge of feeling like you're stuck in one spot? Obviously, we can't be at conferences, but we can't be out in that part of the community. But how have you felt like you've been moving forward, so to speak?
Well, Ben, how honest are we being? So, on a personal level, on a personal level, I was used to working at home some, okay, but having to work from home all the time has been quite challenging. Um,
Yeah,
my husband traveled as much as I did, so we were pretty much doing a bunch of tag team.
yeah,
You're on with the kids. See you later. I'm going to, Vegas, or I'm going to Chattanooga, or whatever it might be. So there's been a big shift in our house. We are now all under the roof, and conference calls and Zoom meetings and homework and school. And I don't know, for those of you that follow our social post, we posted a camper in a driveway as a mobile home office, and that was me. Because we literally had to move our camper down to have another place to go. Okay. And I can tell you that the days that I get camper rights for a few hours to do a few calls and to do a few meetings, it's like a mini vacation. Okay. It's what you were just talking about. It's like I feel like I get out of my hamster wheel and I'm at another place, and I'm like, oh, I have some alone time in the camper. But honestly, we're all navigating different challenges. I talked to a lot of people that we work with, right? Our clients, our team members, we're all sort of experiencing the same thing, and we can be a resource for each other. Two of my best friends have kids of similar ages, and when I'm going through homework nightmare, and how is that a thing in first grade? But it is. Like I don't even know the answer to some of the questions that they ask them in first grade. I have to, ping my friends with the Zoom call, and I find some sanity that way. We've been doing family meetings and friend meetings via Zoom, and each Friday, and I find some sanity that way. We now have 2 agency meetings Mondays and Thursdays, and I find some sanity that way because it's something for me to anticipate and look forward to. And I think maybe that's the key. I think as human beings, not only do we need to keep moving, but we need to have something to look forward to. I read an article the other day about how there's a lot of anticipatory grief happening, meaning like I don't have that next trip to look forward to. I don't have that next conference to look forward to. I don't have this looking forward to. Hi, Matt. That's my husband. Did you see that? um, you know, my husband, for those of you that can't see that, just said that he's going to get the camper when I get home. So I guess he is logged in and is watching me do this with 2 kids. I don't know how. But there's a lot of anticipatory grief there, and I think having something to look forward to can give us a lot of sanity, whether that's professionally or personally. So my company has been doing a really good job for our team. We're trying to do a lot of team events and virtual events, and finding ways to connect. We did a Netflix party a week, maybe 2 weeks ago, where my company delivered lunch to everybody at their homes, and we watched Incredibles 2 together as a team through Netflix party. We all logged in with our kids. You can't see each other, but you can chat, next to the movie the whole time. And, it seems silly, but it was such a special day for our team. My kids felt like they were part of mommy's work. I felt like I was connected again with some of my coworkers and doing something fun. And I just think finding ways to do a lot of that. I also think, and this is a passion point of mine, I saw a meme the other day that said, if you do not find time during this pandemic to learn a new skill, then you never really lacked time, you lacked discipline. And that reads very well and that is very powerful. But I will say this, I rolled my eyes so hard when I saw that because I was like, I do not feel like I lack discipline. I feel like I'm a very disciplined person, but I have less time now than I ever have. And I've slowed down in some ways. I'm not traveling a lot, but my day goes by like this because I'm having to wear so many different hats and transition and do a lot of different things. And I think a lot of people are in that boat. And so I'm real passionate just to offer one another grace during this time, patience during this time, which I'm not very good at, but just trying to be empathetic to our fellow neighbor, to our fellow friend, to our fellow coworker, clients, customers, and just understand that everybody has their own hardships and just try being human, try being, a friend, try being truly care about the needs that they're going through. And I think that will give us some maybe human fulfillment that we haven't had when we were so busy and unable to focus on one another. So I think that is just something we should all try and do more of right now.
I appreciate that a ton. My wife and I have had some of the same conversations where we're saying, we see these photos of these perfectly put together homes where they're educating their kids, and you're like, I'm sorry, but that's like a Pinterest like fail waiting to happen, And there's too many of us kind of like judging people for, oh, if you're not working out all the time, then what are you doing? Or if you're not baking these perfect things, and I think there's just too much judging going on right now.
Yeah, I agree. In social, all right, so like you and I are both in social media world and it's really fun. I get asked all the time, like, how did you justify that? Like how in the world are you getting paid and get to travel and talk about social media? And there is such a positive side to that, but there's also a negative side to that because if you're supposed to be on social all the time, you never really get a chance to disconnect, right? And I think right now in the social space, there's a lot of my life is perfect, and I have now learned how to be the perfect parent and the perfect full-time employee and the perfect this and that. And then there's the whole opposite side that's like my life is awful and nothing is going right and everything is gloom and doom. And it's real hard to kind of scroll through and feel like I scroll and I'm just kind of like, ooh, all the time, right? Like I'm either not doing something well enough or I feel like my life is better than yours at the moment. And now I feel bad for you. And, a lot of different emotions that go through with that. And I just think we have to understand that everybody is going through something. And if you can just exude kindness, it's never a bad idea, even virtually.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And when we're operating kind of from a distance, a lot of times we can when we were traveling to conferences, it's pretty easy to take a 3-day conference when you're doing 2 in the same week and you're spending most of your time in an airport, and all of a sudden you have that one moment where you're like, this is Instagram worthy, and I take a photo of it, and then everybody says, well, that must be fun, right? Yeah.
So true.
Yeah, but
so true. Yeah, it's like you should just have like a little GoPro and like document like missing the flight or arriving to a hotel that isn't put together or arriving and speaking to a room that you thought would be full of bankers and there's like 2 people. Those moments.
been there. Yes. Yeah, and I think we had some other comments in. I feel like I'm the only person not on vacation, Patrick says, and completely. Like, I think that's what's so interesting right now in the banking space is this is such a critical position. And I've heard bankers say this in the last week. I almost feel like I have a new sense of patriotism about my work this week. And that's been inspiring to hear some of the stories as well.
Man, isn't that the truth? I mean, I think everybody wants to feel fulfilled in their job. And Patrick, I also do not feel like I'm on vacation, so I can join you in that. I have seen a lot of people that are treating this, like vacation, and good for you if you're able to. My husband is in loss prevention for CVS Pharmacy or CVS Health, whatever they're called now. So he's kind of on the health side of this spectrum, and I'm on the financial side of the spectrum, and it's really interesting to see the different stress points that the financial side is facing and the health side is facing. And, we have a lot of interesting conversations just kind of about our own industries that we work in and what's happening there. So, I I don't know how all this will end up. I don't think anybody does, but yeah, it's just been real interesting to try and find our own footing, and definitely I also feel very, 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 very proud of the financial industry right now. I think I'm saying that to anybody who will listen, and a new fulfilled um, sense of pride in bankers, which I feel like I've had ever since I've worked here for 11 years. I see how hard bankers work, but definitely the past 2 weeks. I mean, you can tell like they are not just going to work. They are not just doing a job. They are truly feeling like they are doing something that impacts the livelihoods of the communities that they serve. And indeed they are truly impacting the livelihood of the communities that they serve.
So, Amber, the next couple weeks, besides giving Matt some well-deserved camper time,
He gets plenty.
when you get back, what do the next couple weeks look like for you?
Well, so April, I was not supposed to be in town one single week. If you were looking at my calendar for the year, April was the month that my husband and I would just sort of both cringe. There was a lot of different events happening where we were like, oh my gosh, this is going to be tough with the children. The next couple of weeks looks the same as the past couple of weeks for me. I was supposed to be at the School of Bank Marketing in Atlanta next week. I keep forgetting what day it is. I think that was supposed to be next week. And that has got canceled until next year. So I will not be doing that, unfortunately, which as a graduate of that school back in 2011, that was one of my favorite things to do each year is to go back and teach there. And so I'm definitely going to be missing that. I was supposed to be doing a couple events for Ohio Bankers League in May, and then teaching at Stonier in June. Those have been pushed. I think Stonier is going to a virtual route, so that'll be interesting to kind of navigate. I've done webinars virtually. I've never taught a class virtually, so it'll be interesting to kind of read the room and hopefully be able to provide value to the bankers that are going to be a part of that, which I'm excited about the challenge. It's going to be a challenge to kind of, navigate that and feel that out. On the work side of things, business as usual. We are blessed to be in a good position here at Financial Marketing Solutions. We have a lot of great clients who are doing great things, and we are truly aligning ourselves and being a true partner for our clients to help them through whatever they need right now. So a lot of business as usual with regards to marketing and branding plans that we have had in place, and making sure that we are fulfilling those, but also adapting to the things that some of our bank clients need right now with regards to communication and, as you said, some pivot points with messaging with regards to their brand, and just reevaluating a lot of even media outlets that we're utilizing to get the message across. So that's been a big focus of ours, is not necessarily pivoting from, brand messaging and a lot of the things that we're partnering our clients with regards to communication, but how are we delivering those pieces of communication out there, and what are we using to get it in front of people in a meaningful and empathetic way.
Well, that sounds like some really important work, and I appreciate all you're doing to encourage banks across the country in a really tough time where I know they're working hard, and you are too. So it's just really encouraging to hear from you and hear how your family's doing, and I really hope that we get to see each other in person sometime soon.
Me too. I'm so thankful I saw you in February, though. Was it February?
Yeah, it was bitter cold in Nebraska, but you were out here for the bank marketing conference.
Yeah.
It's a
It
good
was
time to catch
snowing,
up.
and it's snowing there again today, right?
It is right behind me. We're at about 2 inches of snow right now.
That's crazy.
I
And
don't know.
just that's crazy, right? It doesn't do that this late in the year typically, does it?
No, nothing makes sense right now.
Yeah,
I don't know
just
what day it is.
I saw a meme yesterday. I shared it with my team. It was like, before all this happened, there was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Now there is yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And our CEO came back and he said, or just day. It's just day. Yeah, I don't know.
That's right. That's right. We can't get too far ahead of ourselves. Well,
Yep.
Amber, thanks for joining with us.
Yeah.
We're going to try to keep doing this, inviting some of our friends. This has been a fun first one to get to do with you. So thanks for joining us with this experiment. And we'll catch you up again soon.
Okay. Thanks, Ben. Thanks for inviting me. And bye, y'all. Have a good day.
Thanks.